Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. It is pre-match build-up showtime as Liverpool gear up for what would have been a massive clash in the title race as we prepare to face Manchester City at Anfield on Sunday afternoon at 4:30. Of course, recent results have kind of scuppered that billing for the game. Liverpool are now, of course, I believe it's, 7 points behind Manchester City, but they have a game in hand. So we're essentially looking at a 10-point gap here. If we hadn't lost the game at home to Brighton, then we would have gone into this game knowing that we could reduce the, what you'd call the theoretical gap. I'm basically accounting for the assumption that Man City will probably win their game in hand. You would have reduced that theoretical gap to 4 points, which would have really made something of the title run-in, although, of course, there's so much time to go yet that we're not even really in a run-in yet. There's still plenty that can happen between now and the end of the season. And as Jurgen Klopp kind of alluded to in his press conference, you never really look at this stage of the season as being part of the title run-in. He's acknowledged how over the last couple of seasons where Liverpool have been involved in that battle for first place, it's not been something that's run all the way through the season. While the narrative, of course, exists in the press and everything like that, it's very much a matter of as you get towards either the end of the season or probably in last season's case, the point where it gets close to when Liverpool can mathematically secure it. Once that comes in sight, and by in sight I mean you're at least in single figure games before the end of the season, with maybe 8 or 7 games left or something like that, then you start saying to your players, okay, let's really knuckle down and go for this. The goal is in sight and you can really put yourself into tunnel vision and solely aim for that. But at this stage, regardless of where you are in the table, that's not really in anyone's minds at the moment. So it probably wouldn't have been a huge thing for Jurgen Klopp to mention to his players before this game, but I think as fans and in general around the club, it would have given a huge boost and created the idea that maybe they could have got involved in the fight for the Premier League crown. As it stands, the best Liverpool can do is reduce that theoretical gap to 7 points, which would mean it isn't done and dusted. But of course, after this, we don't play Manchester City again, so there's no more chances to get any more numbers over them between now and the end of the season. So it would very much be about waiting for them to slip up, which is something that, as we all know, when we have been hot on the tails of Manchester City in the past, they don't really tend to do. So as it stands, it's not really about the title race, and I don't think Jurgen will be mentioning that at all to his players, and they might try and big it up as that kind of thing in the media around the game. I know Sky Sports, who are covering the game over here in England, are making a little bit of a deal of it, saying that this is make or break for Liverpool, that this is their last chance to get involved in the title race. From our perspective, I think it's much more about putting down a marker and putting that Brighton game behind us. It's about acknowledging that the games against Spurs and West Ham, where we looked a lot better, where we were back to our old self and we were, most importantly, scoring goals and winning football matches, that was a sign of what's to come between now and the end of the season. And the Brighton loss was a blip, rather than the other way round, and the Spurs and West Ham games were just a freak batch of good results, and Brighton was a regression to the mean and a sign of how the rest of the season was going to go for Liverpool. Obviously, as I've said time and time again, we don't want to get embroiled in a top 4 battle, and as it stands, points-wise, we kind of are. You know, it helps us that teams like Everton and even Aston Villa, although we kind of don't really consider them a serious threat, haven't played as many games as us and therefore aren't really as close to us in the table as they could potentially be. But those teams are much closer to us at the moment than we are to Manchester City. So we've got to put down a marker here, especially given that this is the kind of game where those rivals probably would drop points. Aston Villa have lost to Manchester City. You'd expect Everton to do the same. That tends to happen, and it has happened over the last few years. So to get a win against Manchester City would really put a little bit of distance between us and them and prevent us from getting involved in a real scrap. Because as I said, if you want to go into that tunnel vision mode at the end of the season, you want the goal at the end of that tunnel to be a shot at the Premier League title and not grasping at straws to try and finish 4th in the Premier League. So it's still a massive game, a great opportunity for Liverpool to lay down a marker, but unfortunately, given recent events, it maybe doesn't hold the same significance in terms of the race for the title that it maybe would have done had we managed to win against Brighton. But with that behind us now, looking ahead to the game at the weekend, Jurgen Klopp held his press conference today and gave us a few positive injury updates. Mane, of course, having been absent from the last 2 games, Jurgen said he is back in training. The same goes for Fabinho as well. And of course, Alisson, who suffered that little bit of illness that kept him out of the Brighton game, has returned to training as well. So Alisson will almost definitely be available. Jurgen was a little bit more cautious on the topic of Mane and Fabinho, although I fully expect them to start. I'd be incredibly surprised, given how short their layoffs were as well. It's not like they've had long injuries to come back from. It's just little knocks that we've kept them out as a precaution, and therefore they should be able to come straight back into the starting 11 after a couple of training sessions, so I'm not too worried there about their fitness for this game. We also found out that Ozan Kabak has received his international clearance to play, so he will now be available for Liverpool as well. It will be interesting to see whether either him or Ben Davies start in this game. Jurgen Klopp said that it would be a matter of how they perform in the upcoming training sessions. Of course, they will have had some sessions today. The same will take place tomorrow as well, and in an ideal world, as the manager said, they wouldn't be thrown in this early. They'd have a few weeks to work with our shape, to get a grasp of our tactics, to watch highlights reels of Van Dijk and Matip and get to grips with the exact role of a centre-half within the Liverpool setup. Unfortunately, that's probably not going to be the case because we need them in the team sooner rather than later. So, as I said, I think it is a matter of how they train before this game. If Jurgen Klopp likes what he sees from Ozan Kabak or even likes what he sees from Ben Davies, then he may just, take the decision to bite the bullet and throw them in for this game, because it is a bit more of a free hit now than it maybe was before the Brighton game. If this had been a real chance to lay down a marker in the title race and get ourselves right back in the mix, then maybe Jurgen would have been a bit more cautious about throwing a player into this game. But because it's not really about the title race anymore and it does become a bit more of a free hit, like it's been against City in the past, looking back to that mad 4-3 game, or when we played them in the European Cup as well, it was a situation where losing wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world, and therefore you can do something a little bit crazy in the pursuit of getting a win, and therefore maybe throwing in a young centre-half who hasn't had any experience playing for Liverpool beforehand might actually be the best thing you can do for this game. So as for how I think Liverpool are actually going to line up then, I think it will definitely be Alisson Becker in goal, provided he doesn't, get another cold or anything like that on Sunday morning. In front of him, I think Fabinho comes straight back in the centre-half pairing, and I think he will be partnered by Ozan Kabak. And my reasons for this are twofold. It's the aforementioned one about how the game's a bit more of a free hit now and you can afford to throw someone in, and it is a bit sink or swim for the lad. You worry that maybe if it doesn't go well for him, he could receive a little bit of a setback. But the thing is, as a young centre-half adapting to a new league, you're going to make mistakes anyway, so you may as well get them out early. And if he has got the potential to succeed at Liverpool, then if he makes errors on Sunday, he'll bounce back from them and he'll be a better player for it. But hopefully he doesn't. I do think he'll get put in the side, and I also think that is because we need Henderson in the midfield. It was evident against Brighton that when a team sits off against us, we just really struggle to have that urgency in the centre of the park that is provided. Obviously, Henderson's quality of passing and everything like that is valuable to have at the back with the centre half, so he can still contribute in that way. But it makes it more difficult for him to affect the tempo further up the pitch. And obviously, we all know his ability to do that as captain, both vocally in terms of just shouting at the players and getting them going, but also in terms of receiving the ball in key areas in the centre of the park and moving it into the right spaces at the right pace. He sets the tempo so well for Liverpool, and he struggles to do that from centre half. So I think if you were to put Kabak in at centre half, it frees up Henderson to play a little bit higher up the pitch. So I think Kabak comes in alongside Fabinho. They'll be flanked by Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andrew Robertson, and then in front of them, I think Jordan Henderson returns to the midfield, and I think he plays in the number 8 role as well. Gini van Wijnaldum has been pretty impressive in the number 6 role recently, so I think he retains his spot at the base of the midfield 3. Thiago stays as the number 8, where he can be more effective a little further up the pitch, and then having Henderson as a number 8 also puts him in a position, I'm presuming he'll be on our right and Thiago will be on our left, which means he's playing near Trent Alexander-Arnold. And maybe one of the reasons that Trent hasn't been brilliant so far this season is because that midfield spot's rotated a lot. Trent's at his best when the team is settled and when Henderson is normally playing alongside him, and as we know, Henderson will drop deep into those wide channels to allow Trent Alexander-Arnold, when we have the ball, to push forward and be more of a threat going forward. And Trent's probably just second-guessing himself a little bit, being a little bit more tentative because Henderson isn't there. And that's not a slight on other midfielders like Keita or Wijnaldum or Thiago or Ox or any of them, but they just don't fulfil that role in the same way that Jordan Henderson does. So I think by putting him there in the number 8 role on the right-hand side, you do also allow yourself to get even more out of Trent Alexander-Arnold, which of course would give Liverpool a much better chance of winning the game, because Trent is, as we know, at his best when he is facilitated within this team game absolutely brilliant. So I think that is going to be the midfield. And then the front three, I think we do go with the usual suspects for this game. They all seem to, get themselves up for a game against Manchester City. They've had iffy form between all three of them of late. They've all had rough patches recently, all at the same time as well, as we know from the fact that Liverpool have been struggling to find the back of the net before the last few games. So that it hasn't been going perfectly, and that is why Jurgen has rotated. He's given Shaqiri game time. Origi's come in and out of the side as well. We've even seen Curtis Jones playing at the left wing in the FA Cup. But for this kind of game, it suits those three down to the ground normally. And so I think as a result, Jurgen will be compelled to start all three of them. And by all three of them, if you haven't guessed already, I mean Mo Salah on the right-hand side, Sadio Mane on the left-hand side, and Roberto Firmino spearheading things from the middle. So that is how I think Liverpool are going to line up. In terms of how I think City are going to approach the game, I think they might actually make it a little bit more difficult for us than they normally do. Typically, when we're up against City, we really get up for it because we know they're going to give us a game and they're almost going to play into our hands in a way. And that's not a slight on Pep Guardiola, because by playing into our hands, they also play the best way they can. They give themselves the best chance of winning a game typically. They like to take the game to us, go toe-to-toe, have a lot of the ball, play high lines and stuff like that. That works for them. It just so happens that it makes life a little bit easier for the Liverpool attackers as well, and it does become a straight shootout, and it all pretty much always becomes a matter of who is better on the day. If you look back at all the last few games where Liverpool or Man City have won, obviously there have been a few draws here and there, but generally when a team wins, it's because they were just better, not because they tactically outfought the opposition or anything like that, but just because everything they tried to do came off perfectly. Looking back at the 4-0 at the Etihad last season after the restart, it was quite obvious that we were off the pace, and City, who came with the bit between their teeth for that game. Before that, at Anfield, when we won 3-1, I think we were just a class above. We were in a beautiful vein of form at that time. So normally it is just the best man wins. But because of the way City have adapted the way they play as they've gone on through this season, and it's something I've mentioned in previous videos and something I think we should potentially be looking to do as well, acknowledging that this season is a season like any other and you have to change your playing style. As a result, they may actually alter the dynamic in a way that will probably not benefit us. I'm expecting them to be more defensive, to sit off a little bit, to not look to, pile men forward every single time they have the ball, and also to let us have possession. Also because they will have seen that working recently. They'll have seen teams sitting off, and I'm not saying they're going to do a West Brom or Burnley style park the bus, but they will have seen how Liverpool have struggled to make things happen when they've had long periods of possession, and City know that this whole defensive counter-attacking thing has been working for them recently, so they'll probably sit into that mode and kind of put the onus onto Liverpool to break them down. And I think that game will make it a little bit more difficult. There won't be the same kind of space for Mo Salah and Sadio Mane to operate in. Firmino might struggle as well. He'll probably be hounded off the ball a lot more quickly. He'll probably be receiving it, in the way that not in the way that he likes, which is to press and win it back from tackles and interceptions when the opposition are on the back foot, but receiving it to feet with his back to goal and his back to the box and stuff like that, where he might struggle to influence the game a little bit more. So I think City will make it tough for us. The obvious bonus for Liverpool is they don't have key players in Sergio Aguero and Kevin De Bruyne. Gabriel Jesus has deputised reasonably well for Sergio Aguero over recent games, but I think there is still a gulf in class between the two of them. Certainly when you look back on games between Liverpool and Man City, Jesus has never scared me in the same way that Aguero does. And listen, touch wood, he doesn't. Prove me wrong this weekend. It could happen that he has the absolute game of his life, and he did of course score against us at the Etihad, but Aguero is the kind of player where if he gets the ball in the box, the chances are he's going to make a shot for himself, and the chances are that shot will go in. He is just a footballer in a class above pretty much anyone else who's ever played in the Premier League. So it is definitely a bonus that he's not available for City in this game. And the same goes for De Bruyne as well, because he was a real key player for them in the draw at the Etihad earlier on in the season. I think Liverpool could have won that game if it wasn't for De Bruyne's fantastic influence on the match. He sets up the goal, he wins a penalty as as well. Unfortunately for him, fortunately for us, he misses that penalty, which obviously would have probably given Manchester City all 3 points. But he is so key to them, especially when they maybe aren't playing as well, when they're doing this defensive style. They need to rely on a player who can deliver when they try and create chances. You know, they're not looking to create goal scoring chances every single time they get on the ball. So when they do look to get forward and find that killer pass, they need De Bruyne to do that. And maybe without him, that could be a crucial tipping point in this game. But as I said, I think City will make it difficult for us. The style of play that they're implementing at the moment may actually benefit them in terms of upsetting the balance of our team and how we usually like to play against Manchester City. But I think with it being at home, of course, as Jurgen said, even without the crowd, we like playing at Anfield. It still is a better environment to be in than away from home. The players don't have to travel. They're surrounded by people they know, people they see every single time they play a home game. They feel comfortable within their own dressing room and stuff like that. And Manchester City will still have a little bit of a psychic block about coming to play us away from home. So I am still predicting a Liverpool win, although I'm a little bit apprehensive this time. I think I might take a draw. You know, it doesn't knock our confidence too much in the grand scheme of things. If we are looking at a top 4 fight, a point against Manchester City is a good result, probably more than most of our top 4 rivals will be able to get against them between now and the end of the season. But I do still think that Liverpool on their day can beat anyone, and they can definitely beat this Manchester City side. And what we tend to see under Jurgen Klopp is no matter what form we're in, when Man City come to town, we tend to get the job done and often get it done in pretty impressive style. So that is how I think the game is going to go. Let me know how you think it's going to go down in the comments below. Apart from that, that is all for today's video. So thank you guys very much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, as always, you know what to do. Hit the like button down there. Hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days. Don't forget to follow at LIVMCI Focus TV on Twitter. And I'll be back soon with the post-match content after the game against City. Until then, bye for now.